Hey Travis, I heard a story of you having rough upbringing. Do you mind sharing your story from the beginning to up to the point of your life at this moment of time?
Yes, I don't mind sharing it. I know it's kind of rough to do it, but coming up, I was raised in, New Jersey, which is Camden, New Jersey, and single mother. So just to go into, where you want me to start at telling my story, and just let everyone here know. From it all started roughly when I was 16 years old. I was kind of like homeless. I was living in the streets. I was actually living in a friend's porch, and I was living in abandoned houses where I was at.
Wow, so you were living in abandoned houses?
Yeah. Yes, there's for a place in Camden, New Jersey. It was like Fifth and Grant. It's a corner abandoned house. So I was in the house for like 30 days, 40 days straight. But I had paid some addicts, like fiends or whatever you would call it, drug addicts, to kind of clean up all the debris and crazy stuff up in this upstairs. And there was like milk carts, like milk crates that this corner store used to put on the side, and I'd go get the milk crates, and I made like a little bed with the cardboard that I got out of the trash can, and I was just standing there. And the reason why I was in there is because at the time, I was like on the run for police who was looking for me because things that, they was trying to accuse me of something that I didn't really know nothing about. So it was kind of hard. And from that point, I was just, sleeping in abandoned houses until I got to the point where, you had some people that was Hispanic in there. That's how I got cool with a lot of them. They started seeing that I was there, coming there, giving me food and stuff like that. It was a friend of mine named Che. I used to sleep on his porch because he had a couch, and his wife was Lucy. She used to come and open the door probably like 6 in the morning something, because she was getting ready for work. So I used to just clean my eyes up and act like I was asleep, and she'd come look at me after the third day on the porch. She'd be like, "You sleeping here?" And I used to be like, "No," because I didn't want nobody to know that I was sleeping out there. And it was rough for her that time that I was going through, and it was very difficult, which is a very long story for me to tell to you, and I know you want to know how I went through what I went through. So from that time, for me sleeping in those abandoned houses, not having nowhere to sleep, and it was a few people that kind of helped me out in that situation. But however, it led to me being to the point where I was finding out my mother was about to be arrested because they tried to say that she was harboring a fugitive or something like that. So they was going to lock my mother up if I didn't turn myself in. So I ended up turning myself in. And when I did turn myself in, they put me on a kind of like like house arrest monitor. And from there, I was home for a little bit, out of the time. And from that time, it got to the point where, they kind of locked me up for crimes that was going on. And they put me in a detention home. So while I was in this detention home, it was called TDH. And I was 16 at the time, and when I was there, the lady it was a lady that was in the detention home. She came and she told me to step out. And when I went to this little room, I seen her and a few other staff, and she looked like she had tears in her eyes. She was looking, and she was like, "Hey, come here." And I was like, "What's going on? Is everything okay?" She was like, because I started worrying about my family. She said, "Yeah." And then she said, "Do you know about what did she call it? She said, do you know about, certified? I said, what you mean? She was like, she had it crying. She was like, I told you he don't know. He's like, she was moist, and she was like, I told you. She was like, baby, they trying to certify you. I said, what is that? They trying you as an adult and send you to adult jail. And I was like, huh? And, she was kind of crying, saying that it wasn't right. And then a couple of days later, they came and took me to adult facility jail. And
So you were 16 years old at this time, going through such a rough life.
Yeah, it was 16, and I didn't really know, because, it was just very hard. I was always dealing with the difficulties. And yes, I was 16 when this all started out. And when I went through the jail, they kind of went through some juvenile blocks, and I seen somebody in there. It's like, he supposed to be in here. They said no. So they took me to this one block, and they put me in this block and told me, that's your cell right there, go in there. And I went in there. While I went to the cell, I'm sitting in there, and all these older dudes come out, and they start looking at me. And while they looking at me, I'm like, never been in jail before, so I'm like, I'm about to do some karate, I don't know what they going. So they come and grab me, and they were like, hey, come here, youngin'. I'm like, what's going on? It was like, how old are you? I said, I'm 16. And he was like, what the fuck? And he was like, what the fuck? Like, come here. And it was like, stay right here. And they all went down the stairs, and they started knocking on the door. They get the CO, and they just get the correctional officer, and they're like, he don't supposed to be in here. He only 16. I got kids that's younger than him, that's older than him. He don't supposed to be in here. And then the CO came, and he looked at me. He was like, hold on, let me see. And then he looked at, come back, and he said, no, he supposed to be in here. And they was like, what the, they was grabbing, like, what the fuck is he supposed to be in here for? Why they got this, he was 16, what the fuck? So I was in there. And then one time, it was a guy named Kamasi, he was from LA, and it was another brother named Ford. And I like, Kamasi was a good guy, because when he came to the block, he kind of like killed all the fighting, all the people that was stealing. And he came to me, it was like, yo, youngin', come here. And I started talking to him. He said, look, it got cool with Kamasi, because he said, go downstairs and go to all the cells and tell the dudes that he was going to buy them commissary, and that Friday, Saturday, Sunday he was going to put out like food and chips, but tell them that they can't steal or be fighting each other for nothing. So while I wouldn't do that, he kind of would start asking me about my situation, because when they see me when I was going back and forth to court, I was coming in when they could see that my mindset was messed up. And he kept saying, I got to write the NAACP, the ACLU. I didn't know what none of that was. So he was like, you got to write that. I said, I don't know what they are. And, I was going through so much of it. And he was like, let's go to the law library. So I met a few people, they was taking me to the law library. And when I went to the law library, they was like, man, they don't got nothing on you, man, And he was like, call your family and start telling them, to get you a lawyer, because you going through stuff. And they was right there on the phone while I was calling. So I used to call on the phone. And when you call on the phone, you can hear whoever pick up on the phone. So they was like, you got to collect call from, and I say my name, Travis. And it was like, you got to collect call from Travis. Push this, and I can hear them saying, oh man, he ain't gonna blow up this damn phone, hang up. And I just hear everybody. I have a few family members I call, and they say that, and this one time I just banged the phone, and it was like, yo, young, calm down. And I just was like, I was in a messed up mindset, because I'm in another state that I don't know nobody there, and these people saying that they certifying me. And every time I was going to court, they was asking me, hey, it'll be a detective or somebody. He was like, hey, why you don't tell the people what's going on? And one of the time I went there, he was like, if you don't, you're going to get a life sentence. So one time that I was going there, and while this guy, I didn't know who he was at the time, he gave me a piece of paper. He said, listen, you don't supposed to be in here. He said, see this? I'm looking at the time on it. He said, you was in New Jersey when a lot of this stuff was going on. There's no way you could have been here in this time because we had officers chasing you and they had to find a report when they was chasing you, and this stuff was going on a couple of hours, you know, so there's no need to be there. So I was like, can I get that paper? Because I want to get free. He said, no. And then he told me who he was. He was like, I'm a detective. If you're not going to cooperate, then you're not going to get out of here. And I was like, well, if you got that, why you just don't, you know, let me get out there?
So you're being charged for stuff that happened in New Jersey, but you were located in a different state?
Well, it was not just being charged for that. I was in Virginia. But at the time when I told you I was living in abandoned houses, they were chasing me and they was looking for me at that time. But they had a bunch of cases that they was questioning me about in New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Virginia. And they wanted me to, you know, they kept asking me, you're going to cooperate. If you don't say nothing, you're not going to get free. And that's what I was going through.
So in other words, they were connecting you to crimes that you had no involvement in, and they just wanted you to basically agree to, you know, some crimes that you didn't have anything to do with.
Yes, they was basically trying to say that I know the people, you know, they kept saying if I was in this area, I know these people, that, you know, that I was knowing that who they were. And when I was in Virginia, they kept saying it was the Jersey boys. Yeah, I remember y'all, you know, you had somewhere in there, and there was a family member that they kind of like, you know, came to me and described him. Somebody told them, you know, said that. And it was like, you live with him, you're not going to talk and tell us who he is or what not. And I was just like, you know, I didn't know anything. So what they did was they brought my mother in. And my mother was standing like in front of me, and then they started questioning me. And I sat back and said, I don't want to talk. And then my mother looked at me like, you know, and he was like.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that there was crime that was committed in New Jersey, and you were in Virginia, and they were trying to connect you to those crimes that you had no involvement in. So basically they were saying, you're the person that's responsible for what's going on in New Jersey. However, you're in Virginia.
Yeah, at the time, when I said I live in abandoned houses, I was in New Jersey at the time. And there was stuff that was going on in Virginia. So when I turned myself in, because that's where they was trying to lock my mom up in Virginia. So when I went to Virginia, that's where they was coming. And they was questioning me about so many, you know, crimes in Virginia, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and it was just saying, you know, like they had a family member of mine, they kind of had described him, and they was like, hey, you live with him. If you don't say nothing, you know, you're going to get, you know, life sentence, you ain't going to come home. So they had my mom in front of me, and they called her, and they told her, ma'am, you know, if he don't say nothing, he's looking at life sentence. And I wouldn't talk. I said, I ain't got nothing to say. And, you know, they kind of did that. And every time that I was facing with one of them, they always came to me and say, hey, if you don't talk, you're going to get locked up. We're not going to, you know, you're going to get a life sentence. And one time I was in a courtroom, it was just me, the judge, and the deputy. And the judge, he said, man, I hope you don't live to die in prison. I hope you live to regret all this stuff. And, you know, they was doing a lot of stuff to me. Like when I first went to the jail, they put me in behind in an area where it was confined, and they wasn't feeding me. And they kind of like, you don't want to talk, come here. And they put me there, and it was in a cell where the only person was there was a guy who was on medication. And they had me there for 3 days straight, and I wasn't eating nothing. I was yelling for the food. They wouldn't say nothing. And when I was in there, the guy was like, you know, ignore me. So I came like 16. I just was like, you know, I was messed up because, you know, I just was, you know, there. So I was kind of like, I wasn't sleeping, I'll be honest with you. I was crying like crazy. And I, like the 5th day after I had been eating, there was a nurse bringing this guy medication because he was going crazy. And then I called her, and she was like, who is you? And when I looked, she called the other nurse, and she was like, "What is he doing in here? Look at his face." And I guess she could see that I wasn't asleep. And she went to go get the correction officer. She like, "What is he doing back here?" And he said, "I don't know." She was like, "Y'all better get him from back here. What are y'all doing to him? He's a kid." And from there they put me back into the block of where they was at, and the guys there was like, "Man, where you been at? What's up? What's going on?" And I was just going through that, and they was just telling me, "Man, call home, man. Call your house and tell your family what they doing to you." And I get on the phone again, like I call numbers, because back then you remember numbers back then. You would remember phone numbers. You can remember 20 numbers. So I call, and they'd be like, "Everyone, you got a collect call from, hang up." It was a few people, a couple of people, like, two of my aunts that, I say three of them that, they answer, but it's not much they could really do. And from there, it was just so much that I was going through, and it was real tough. Like, all the guys was kind of like, there was a guy named Troy Franklin, they called him Pablo, everything. And
So basically, from what you just shared with us, it sounds like they was trying to get you to confess to some crimes that you had no involvement with, and because you weren't confessing to those crimes that you did not commit, they was somehow punishing you. They was trying to get you to a place where you just got very weak, because you're 16 years old, you're a minor, you don't know what's going on, you're reaching out to your family, they're not accepting your call, so here you are, basically you against the prison system. They're connecting you to crimes, and you didn't have anything to do with it, and they was trying to punish you. So they was basically using you as a scapegoat for criminal activity that happened, and they probably was like cold cases, and they just wanted to close them out by using you basically as a victim to crimes that you didn't commit.
yeah, well, basically it was going on with some crimes in the area, and what they were doing is trying to get me to, they wanted to see that there was some crimes in the area there, what they said, and it was like, cases that didn't get solved or whatever. So I was the youngest person that they arrested, and that was the thing that they did, because when I first got locked up, I was walking down the street, and I had found the gun over there. And when I walking down the street, the guy was like, "Man, come walk through this way." And I ended up going down there, and the cop stopped these two people, and I kept walking. And then he was like, and then other thing, this guy just came out, and he was like, "Where you going?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Where you going?" And I was just like, "Who are you?" And then next thing you know, he kind of like grabbed me, and when he grabbed me, he felt like there was a gun right there. He pulled his badge out, then I knew he was a cop, because I didn't know who he was. He didn't have his badge. And when he pulled it out, it was a bunch of undercovers, like they all came out putting their guns out. I mean, it was like, "Hey," they had their gun out, like, Come here, give me the gun, dig it in." I said, I got my hand up like this. I said, "You get it." And he was like, "Get it, give it to us." I said, and I had my hand up. I said, "No, you take it." And he was like, "Give it." And I was like, "No, because y'all ain't gonna kill me out here, So the guy went like that. He grabbed a gun, and he was like, and then I was like, "All right, I'm leaving." He said, "No, it don't work like that." So they kind of like grabbed me, and he was trying to throw me to the ground. He was trying to pick me up and throw me to the ground. And once I know that they was on me, and it's like, "You ain't going nowhere, you got to get locked up." So I started walking to the cop car, but they had me trying to throw me to the car, and I'm trying to walk to the car, but they actually wanted me to take me to the ground, so I wouldn't go to the ground. And I started walking to the car, like got like three of them on me, running to the car, walking to the car. So they was trying to slam me, but it was one cop, and he was there, and he was a black guy, and I was looking at him. I'm like, "Man, I'm going to the car. I'm only 16 years old, man." And he looked at me, and he seen his face, and he seen that I was there. He's like, "Hey, let him, he hit the car. They was like, no, we gotta go take him to the ground. He said, no, he's right here. Just put it, he's only a kid. So what they did is, first time my charges was possession of a handgun under age of 18, resisting arrest, damaging state property, and they had me for assault for a police officer. So all the charges, that was my only charge. That was the only charge I had, and I was ready to go for sentencing. But once I was about to go to sentence, that's when they came back with like 40-something charges, felonies. And that's when all this stuff came, when I was ready to go. When the lady told you that they was trying to certify me, I didn't know. When I went back to court, was going to court, and they came and they brought out a bunch of papers saying, hey, you're not going in there. And I'm like, I'm supposed to go in here for sentence. He said, no, your name Travis. I said, yeah. He said, no, you're being tried as an adult. And they did that.
So, the incident you were just talking about, that took place in Virginia, correct?
Yes.
And was that your first time ever having any type of encounter with law enforcement?
Yeah, that was my first time ever being, getting locked up like that. And, every time, even, it was my first time running to any of the cops, because even a juvenile, like, I have people that when I seen a juvenile, they were shooting people, they was doing all that stuff, and they was doing it, and they was still getting juvenile time or whatever. So that was my first time as a juvenile and an adult, because what they did when I was a juvenile at the time, they tried me as an adult. And that's what made me feel like that, that's what I went through.
So when they charged you as an adult, that was for the additional 49 charges you were talking
yes,
about.
they had those things, and what they did is I didn't know, because there was, it was like 40-something charges, and they had me with, and once they came and they, it was put me in a jail. And that's what I was going through. Even in my trial, there was a guy who was in the trial, and he came, and I didn't even see. He could tell he was there, and he could just say, he had his hands up talking about, all I could see was his eyes like this. And I looked at him, but I didn't have no lawyer. You gotta understand, I had a public defender. So when he said that, I hit the public defender. He's like, quiet. I said, man, ask him if he'd seen any acne on my face, because at the time I had, bumps right there. How you gonna tell somebody he had his hand just like that above his side, saying the only thing I can see was his eyes, I know it's him. I'm like, this was no right, where it sounded like they coached the people, because once when the police came and the police department came, they told me, they gave me a ski mask and told me put this ski mask on, and I'm looking crazy, like, he's like, you better do this. So they was telling me to do things and put yourself this way and do all this, and from there I was just, not knowing what to do, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just listen to them. And from there, even from this guy, I could tell them that, they coached this guy to be to the point where he was, to know that, they was coaching him. And it's kind of crazy, because one of the guys at the block who had a lawyer, he got a lawyer to call me to give him my paperwork. And he said, they don't have no evidence on you. You should be out of here. He was like, man, your family give me $5,000. I would do monthly payments. Because I didn't know nothing about monthly payments. I didn't know nothing about lawyers. But it was like, tell them to do me monthly payments. So when I get in the block, in this jail, these guys was being locked up for a long time. So when I get in the jail, these guys actually got the phone waiting on me. Like, man, here, call your family. And they couldn't do it. I remember one time I called my mom, and she answered the phone. And, the guy told her, hey, get your son a lawyer. She said, I can't get him no lawyer. And he even broke it down to her, because that was his lawyer. He said that my lawyer said, he looked at his paperwork, he said he don't got nothing on him. So they didn't have, he talked to my mom, and he was telling my mom, hey, the lawyer said give him $5,000, and mom said, I don't got it. He said, well, he said you can pay payments. And, that was the thing that I was going through from there, he's like, you better pay payments, you can do it. So my mom's saying, I don't got no money, I don't, so, end up we hanging up. And the guys was like, man, this is crazy, man. And they was upset. And from there, I end up getting sent to the prison. So after the person came, they actually sentencing me. And when he sentenced me, because they wasn't feeding me, they wasn't doing nothing, they was just kind of like torturing me when I was in there. And they guys seen that. So I'm glad I was in a block with those guys, because they was kind of protecting me. So they seen what I was going through. And when I actually, went to my sentencing, I didn't eat that day because they didn't feed me. And then the judge, he was like, I never forget his name back now. He said, they put my sentence off 3 times. And he said the reason why he put my sentence off, because he said, this was the judge said, he said, because I have kids that's older than you, and I don't want to be, I feel bad doing what I'm about to do, So they actually gave me, I think like 50 something years. And when he did that, he was like, all right, you got anything to say? And I just thought that, I could tell the judge what they mistreated me. So I said, Your Honor, they didn't give me no food. Man, can you make sure I get something to eat? And then all the prosecutor, all the people was like, oh, I told you he ain't nothing, man. Oh, they were going up. Look, he just say this. And I'm looking around, and he say, get him out my courtroom. And I went out there.
So basically, the prosecutor basically was saying like you weren't being remorseful for a crime that you didn't commit. So when you responded the way you responded, there was no reason for you to be remorse, because deep down you didn't commit any of these crimes. They were falsely accusing you of charges that happened in New Jersey that you weren't involved in.
Yeah, New Jersey, Virginia, Philadelphia. And when it was in Virginia, they was talking about cases in one part of Virginia. It's like 7 different cities. So out of 5 of those cities, they was questioning me about stuff that happened in those things in that area. And just knowing that being in the ghetto, the hood, whatever that people call it, they be a product of where we are at. So they would think that everybody just a bad person there, and they was just questioning me from a lot. But what I was going through, I felt like if they wasn't going to feed me, I would ask the judge, because I wasn't. So what they end up doing is sentence me, and then they sent me to adult prison, which was Southampton. I went over there, and then from there, what happened is 4 years later, they end up coming to me saying that, there was a law called the Baker Law. So 4 years later, they came up saying that they had to do away with my first conviction, that they was sending me back to prison. Send me back to the jail, leaving from prison. So when I went from there, a lot of people was like, man, you about to be free, man. Go back to the. I said I didn't want to go, because you can hear what I've been through the first trial, and I feel like I said, man, I'm not gonna go. They gonna give me more time. And he was like, why? I said, man, because they saying I got to cooperate. I said, I don't want to go. So they sent a deputy to come to the jail to force me to go back to the courts, because I didn't want to go back. And this time when I went back, after 4 years, now at the time I'm almost like 20 years old. So it was like, 20 or something like that. So when I went back to court, this time I went back with the warden at this facility that I was at. I didn't know, he had wrote a letter on my behalf, because when I was in that prison with him, he seen that I had to turn around. I was turning around my life. They had this thing called, I think it was, I forgot what it was. It was called LYC or something like that, where these prisoners would come to talk to these juvenile people. They would come visit her, and they would just basically get these people, not like a scare, almost like a scare straight, but it wasn't scare straight in these people. So the kids, when I used to hear these people going in the yard that was members for this stuff, they was like, the kids were scared to talk. So what they did, I went to I used to go to the warden office all the time, and I used to ask him, can I get into the program? He said, no, you can't get in. You're always in trouble. I said, because I don't got nothing to do. Y'all can't get in no school. So he ended up I went to this counselor dude named Lewis. He ended up putting me inside the, program. And what they did is they made a shirt where they put like a Nike sign. So I was supposed to be a decoy. So while they touring all the juveniles, they was like the probation office. I mean, they was on probation. So while they touring them, they coming back and I'm sitting there. So they guys are sitting around, they my age, and they like, hey man, what you want, man? We was touring. And he was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. So when it was time for the people to speak, and the people that were scared, I used to raise my hand and ask questions. So now when I'm asking questions, all these young dudes want to ask questions now. So it got them involved. So what it is they're coming, there are other members to talk, and then I'll be the last one. They'd be like, hey, somebody amongst y'all that's locked up in here, and so it's showing anyone y'all can get locked up. So I stand up and I start talking, and the young dudes be like, wow. And they'd be so amazed, and I'd be in there. So I actually share with my story, telling them how to stay out of trouble and all that. So when I first did it, they had a newspaper about it and everything. When I first did it, the warden and them was so, were pleased about me that I did it. So when I went for my appeal, which was with the Baker Law, he wrote a letter on my behalf. And I didn't know, because when I got there, I was in a process of taking my GED at the prison. So when I got to the jail, I told them I was taking my GED. Can I take it at the jail? They was like, okay, yes. So when I got to the jail this time on there, everything was different now. It's like when you go into the cell, because there might be a lady working a cell block, so you have to put a blanket over if you was using a bathroom, like taking a crap or something. So that is known to do. So when I did it, they'll come and they'll lock me up. And the guys would be like, man, open the cell, why you locked? So if my cellmate, they'd kick my cellmate out. If I had a cellmate, this should be punishing me. They'd lock me down for like 3-4 days. Then they'll let me open. So one particular day I was going to my GED class, and there was a guy named Elliot up there. He used to be in a GED class, and he was cool because I knew him from both, for both things. And this particular time was so weird. I didn't know what's going on because what I was dealing with. And he said the day before, he said, hey, don't be late tomorrow. You're going to take your GED tomorrow. And I said, yeah. He said, yes, you're taking your GED tomorrow. So I'm excited. I'm like, yeah. So when I went to go in there the next day, he got a whole different mindset. He was like, hey, get out of here. And I started laughing like, man, get out of here. Like thinking it was a joke. And I sat down to pick up my GED book because it has your name on it. And he said, no, I mean, get out of here. So the CO was leaving, and the correctional officer, when he was leaving, as a CO, he's like, get him out of here. So he was leaving. He called me, he said, I'm going to write you up. And he came back, and he talking to him, and then he came back and said, man, let's go. And I said, what's going on? He said, man, let's go. And I'm like, when I'm walking, because, I'm just walking back to the block. I'm like, man, what's wrong, man? I got to take my GED. And he said, no, man, you got to get out. He said, I don't know what's going on. So I think his name was Gibson, because like I say, these stuff starting to come back to me. And I said, man, can you find out what's going on, man? Come on, man. I was like, I'm trying to take my GED. And he say, hold on. And he leave and come back, and he said just like this. He said, man, it's bigger than me. He said, man, I got to leave it alone. I said, what? He said, man, I'm just telling you, it's bigger than me. He said, I can't mess with it. I'm sorry. And it was a guy that, he was locked up too. He heard him. He said, man, that's crazy. And I started figuring like what they doing to me and didn't know. So the second time I went through the trial, and they didn't have no evidence. They used the same thing, gave me more, kind of like they were sentencing me for more time. They gave me more time than I had the first time. And they did the same thing they was doing. They wasn't feeding me. They was just doing like the torture to me. And when the guy, I didn't know, because the lawyer was a public defender. He was a public defender. He had the letter, and he said, oh, the warden wrote on his behalf. And the warden letter was saying, I think this kid should, this guy, he should be home. He was great. He was a kind of like a model for young kids and young adults there. He said, I think he should go home. And then this is when they found out it was all crazy. When the prosecutor came, it's like they spoke his time to speak, and he's like, you know what, Yana? He say, I don't want to hear what that warden got to say about this guy. This guy been back. He's been locked up for 4 years. He came back here. He done got locked up in. I mean, he done got locked up in. He came back in the block. They done locked him down. They done kicked him out the GD class. They done did all, you know. And I was looking at him, and it kind of, because it still touched me to this day, because a lot of it I just reliving it for the first time since I been back. And I looked at the public defender. I was like, man, he was like, you got to be quiet. So the whole courtroom was telling me, you need to be quiet. And then the deputy come by me. He was like, man, you better be quiet. And I'm like, what? I said, man, he said, be quiet. So then the prosecutor was finna talking. Yeah, he get locked up in here. He was doing all kinds of this, that. He got kicked out of GD. So when they did that, they was like, all right, now it's your time to talk. What you got to say after they sentenced me? They gave me more time than this time. They gave me like 70-something years. So he was like, what you got to say? And I just was saying the same thing. I told him, I said, Your Honor, they didn't give me no food. Can you make sure I get something to eat? And he was like, get him out of here. And they actually did that. And they sent me back to the prison that I was at. And when I went back to that prison, I had a lot of people thinking I was home. They always thought I was going home. So my mindset was very, very stressful. When I got back, I had a lot of older dudes that was, that I say older dudes because they did more time than I did. So what they did was they was coming to me because they seen me going off the, going crazy. And the guy was telling me, man. So they was calling me Trey. That's what they used to call me. So they're like, calm down, Trey. They're like, listen, man, I know you got more time, but calm down. I'm going to sit back and, we're going to try to work it out. So they was coming to me and like, hey, man, you need to calm down. You're going to get yourself messed up. And this time when I came back, I met the dude that was a dude that was Jay-Z right-hand man, or cool with him, named Randy. When they say Big Rand, I forget you fool you or something, or that song though. So I was going through a lot at that time. And from there, I ended up getting transferred to another prison. Now, when I came to this prison, which was like a St. Bride's prison, so I started, talking to my mother a little more, So once I got my GD at the prison, when I came back from that jail situation, I told them what I went through. They let me take the GD. I passed the GD. At that, when I came back from prison. So that was when I came back to that prison. So that was one of the good things I did when I came back from that time. So I did that. And then once I got to this prison called St. Bride's, I ended up trying to go to college. And they had college courses in there, but they wouldn't give me the college course. They kept saying, no, you got too much time before your mandatory date and all this. So I used to get upset. So I end up getting a job where they call like a houseman. It's like a houseman is like a custodian where you clean the bathrooms or floors or whatever. And at the time I was getting like $32 a month. You work, you bust your ass, work hard, but you get $32 a month. So when I got those $32 a month, out of that $32, $28 I spend on my college course. So usually I used to take that money to buy like oodles and noodles or some, Jack Max or something food for me to eat through the months. So what I started doing is stealing bread from the chow hall, and then people give me a peanut butter and I just eat. When you take a piece of bread and you put it on a napkin and let it save, it get hard like a cracker or something. So I used to eat that just so I can go with my college thing. So I was doing it good for the college, and it was just, it was cool at the time, for me to do that. And until the tragedy happened with my mother, came and told me that she had breast cancer. Now that story is kind of like touching, because what happened is one day I called my aunt Sharon, and she told me that, because I was going months and sometimes almost years not hearing from my mother. So she told me one time, I called her and she said, how your mom doing since she got out of the hospital? I'm like, she in the hospital? Like, yeah. I was like, what? She was like, yeah. I said, how's she in the hospital? You know, she didn't tell me. It's like, oh, she got breast cancer. I said, what? So I finally tried to call my mom, because there's a few of my shoot out and shout out though, you know what I mean? Like my Aunt Paula, she was a person that answered the phone. My Aunt Sharon, my Aunt Teresa, you know, my Aunt Kathleen sometimes, you know, and, you know, my mother sometimes. So it wasn't just a few people that, you know, I wasn't calling them every day, all day, but when I do call, they might answer the phone for, you know, a couple minutes, 30 minutes or something. So my mom, I called her, and I said, why you didn't tell me you had breast cancer? And she was like, I don't know. I said, why? Why you didn't tell me that? And she told me, she said, oh, well, I'm sorry I didn't tell you because, you know, I didn't want to tell you that. So I was kind of upset. So one particular time, they had a special visit. You know, visits usually be on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, and this visit was on a Tuesday. I never forget. And they told me, you got a special visit. So when I went to the visit room, I mean, not the visit room, you go like in a conference, like a counselor office. It's just me and my mother in there. And she's talking to me, and I'm looking at her weird because I feel weird. And she said, oh, you know, I came to see you because, you know, I got breast cancer. It came back for the second time. So we kind of like, I'm sitting in one chair, she's sitting in another chair, and we sitting right there. So I'm just basically looking at the wall. And she's talking to me, I'm not looking at her. And she just talking for like almost an hour, you know. And she was just telling me how, oh, the breast cancer came back, but we're gonna beat it again. And I'm not looking at her. So she was like, you here? And then I just looked at her and I just say, you know, if you die or something, I ain't gonna give a fuck. You know, she like, calm down. And I just kept going like that, like, nah. And then she was after she was done talking, she was like, come here, give me a hug. I went and hug her. So she was pulling me to the side, hugging me. I didn't do nothing. And she's like, you know, try it. And I ain't saying nothing. I'm just looking at the wall. So she get up and she go talk to the correction officer that was standing outside. So he coming in. He was cool with me. He's like, hey, come on, let's go. I said, so I yelled at him. I said, man, don't fucking talk to me. He's like, what's going on, man? You know, from there. So from there, I end up going to the cell block. And my mom, I didn't know at the time, that she went and told the warden to watch me because I, you know, was taking it hard. So they had this thing where every time a correction officer would come into that building to, you know, if somebody was getting off or somebody was coming on, they would have it in there to come talk to me. And every time one of them come, you know, I used to get upset. Like, man, what the fuck you talking to me for? Make it up. And they be like, oh, you know, and it was kind of like, people, even the dudes that, you know, I was in there locked up with, they be like, man, Trey, calm down, man. And I was like, man, you know, you about to lose, you know, I'm about to lose my mother. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, who gonna calm down? Anybody will be in a mindset like this. And it got to the point where, you know, which is a long story, but it got to the point where I end up having to get kicked out of there and sent to like some mountain areas because, you know, it hadn't been where a correction officer, they saying I assaulted him. And from me assaulting him, they had a emergency transfers for me to get to another prison. And which it was 3-4 hours away from my mother. So I'm on this prison and I'm just like, you know, okay, I keep myself calm. Maybe I'm trying to do the good things so I can see my mom doing all this stuff. And while I'm up there, because over there, if you beat up a correction officer, if you hit them, they could take you somewhere and they assault you. I done seen people that hit a correction officer, they got beat up so bad that they put them in somewhere till they heal up and then they can be able to call their family. So, you know, me, I was going through that. So this particular time, you know, months and months go by. And then I was going to school. I started going back to school and going to work and trying to calm myself down. So one day, you know, you eat before they count. So sometimes you go eat like 5 in the morning or something, breakfast, and then you got to count. So I kept seeing like tombstones in my eye. They had like a light above, you know, from my bed. So when I closed my eyes, I could see like tombstones. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm saying it to myself. So my cellmate, he was like, what's going on? I'm like, because he see me moving crazy. And I'm like, well, I'm good. He's like, man, what's up? I'm like, he's like, man, you alright? I'm like, hold on, man. So I go and knock on the door and I ask the correction officer, I'm like, hey, can I use a phone? He said, we about to count. I said, man, please, I need you to use a phone. And he was like, all right, we can, so I'm like, man, I gotta use a phone. So I'm like, man, there's something right. So after they like counted, he was like, all right, you can use the phone. So when I go down there and I get on the phone, because I wasn't talking to my mom, I didn't have her at, in the numbers like that. So I ended up calling my Aunt Paula, and I ended up getting on the phone. She was like, Trav? I'm like, yeah. And she just did one of them. And I'm like, I'm just thinking like, man, what's going on in my head? But I ain't saying that to her. So I'm like, is everything all right? And she just like, I guess because she didn't know how to tell me. And she guess she didn't probably want to tell me. And she was like, Trav. I said, huh? She said, she said, your mom just died 2 hours ago. And
Wow.
I just hung the phone up. And I kicked the table. I went upstairs to my cell. And my cellie seen me just sitting on the wall, on the floor by the wall. And he was like, man, you all right? And I ain't say nothing. I'm so stuck that he gotta walk over top of me to get to his stuff. And he was like, you all right? I ain't say nothing for nobody for a long time. And then once I got to walking on the yard, I let it out. I was like, man, I lost my mom and stuff. And they was like, man, so they could see that I was dealing with this stuff. It was harsh, and the time is that when I was going through that. So what's crazy was the warden came to talk to me, and he called me out. He's like, hey, you know what? Come here. I said, what's going on? He said, hey, man, your family is cussing me out. They calling me, threatening me. I said, what's going on? He said, because they want you to go to the funeral, and I can't let you go to the funeral because you look like you got this assault on this correction officer. And I said, what? He said, yeah. And he was like, man, I feel bad because I see that you've been in here, you've been locked up since you were 16 and you lost your mother. He said, I really want to send you, but I don't want to put my correction office in some threat because going to a funeral was very touching, and you have been locked up in here and locked up since 16. And I was like, yeah. He said, man, hold on, he just kept looking like he was overwhelmed. He said, man, let me just try. I said, don't worry about it. He said, what you mean? I said, I don't want to go. He said, you don't want to go? I said, no. He said, what do you mean you don't want to go? I said, well, my aunt told me that my mom was dead and that my mom died. I said, so I got years to go. I got, 7 more years or, how long, to go. And I don't want to deal with that, seeing my mom like that, knowing there. I said, so last time I seen my mom, I talked to her, I see her. So I said, I'd just rather keep that thought to say that she's still out there living and that I ain't see her. So I don't want to be dealing with that because I don't want to take that out and, mess myself up. And he was like, it's tough, man. I said, I didn't want to talk about it no more. He said, well, what can I do for you? I said, well, if you don't mind, I just need to walk around sometimes to, get my mind together. He said, okay. So he put in a memo. So every time that I need to talk, I just go to the booth and tell the correction officer I need to go walk out, and then let me out in the front like it's a long stretch, and I can just walk from one end to another end probably 5-6 times, and then they'll let me go back in. So I did that. When I did that, when they let me to walk back and forth and all that, so when I kind of did that, I got transferred to a low facility because everywhere I was at was more like maximum security. So this one was called James River. So when I got there, it was like the first time I can see cars driving by on a regular street, and I never seen that. I could see people getting in their cars. It was kind of like real, stuff I had never even pictured seeing. And from there it was kind of like, wow, I'm just, getting close to going home. And from there, when I went through there, I ended up getting a job where I was serving like the correctional officers and, you know, cooking food for them and all that. So I was in the staff dining hall cooking food for them. I used to iron all my clothes and things like that. I used to iron them and everything. And people used to be like, man, what you coming here to iron your clothes? And what you know, so I was just like, you know, and I didn't know, because what I was doing was following my instincts. You know, it was just instincts telling me to do this stuff, you know, like, you know, following, you know, to iron my clothes. And I got rid of TVs. I stopped, you know, with TVs. I started reading books. There was, I started learning about real estate in there. This was around the time we had the crash in there, and there was a lot of people that was out there, I mean, locked up, that had, you know, I don't know what crime they commit, but they was, you know, doing investments in real estate and all that. So there was a lot of things that was going on at that time where I didn't know. I just kept following my instincts. My instincts is that voice inside of you tell you to do stuff. So I was just following that. And from there I met, you know, some great people there, like Chaplain Ryan, you know, Hassan Sharif, you know, Mr. Curry. Well, Marion Curry, he's like, you know, even to this day, you know, I look at him as a father figure or whatever. And, you know, these was people, Morrell. It was a few people that was correctional officers and all that, but I look at them and it was kind of helping me, put me in the same in a situation to help me. But what was so crazy was I was paying this dude. It was a bunch of people, because in prison you got people who will be in different, you know, ways. Like you have people who'll be walking around talking about war stories, or you have people who'll be working out, people who play basketball, people that be sitting there learning out any kind of things. So I seen this guy. There was a few of them, probably like 7 of them. They was actually teaching each other how to do stocks and all this stuff. So once I asked the dude about the LLC, he was like, well, you don't know what LLC is? I'm like, no. He said, you sure you don't know what LLC? I said, no. He said, well, I'm about to go home, but I need to know all this. So I was paying him like $30 a commissary a month, which is a lot for him to teach me how to do business, how to open up an LLC and all that. And I still got this right now. I had opened up an LLC, and I created one for my mother, and I created one for, you know, a cousin that was like a brother, because when I got to this prison, a year after my mother died, I got to this prison and found out he died a year after, on the same month that my mom died was the following year. So I was cool, and he was like, you know, real close to me, so I was kind of messed up, because me and him was cool. We had it cool, but we broke apart, and I always wanted to come home and talk to him. And it's kind of ironic, because even before he passed away, or I didn't know that before then, it was something weird, because what happened was I had a dream of him, and he came in my dream, but he had a beard, but I didn't see him as a beard, because I tell you, when I left I was 16, so I see him, you know, we ain't had nothing. And I'm looking in a dream, and I'm like, Kev? He's like, yeah. I'm like, man, I shook my head like, you know, and I'm looking at him. He's like, man, they caught me slipping. I said, huh? And I didn't know, and it fade off. And then the next thing you know, probably like a couple weeks later, it was weird. I ain't like, man, what is that? Then my aunt sent me a letter stating that, talking about a funeral. I didn't know who she was. I thought she was still talking about mom, but she talking about him. So it put me in a mindset where I was just like, man, you know, because I told my mom that I wasn't going to care about life if she passed or whatever. So I know that this is probably like within my 24 months of coming home. So I had to change a lot of stuff that I say, because I know that by me spending like 16 years on the street, you know, from 16 to 16 in prison, that I can't go home and do the wrong things, because my life will be done.
Wow. You have been through so much, and I know there's so much more to your story. From the beginning was talking about how you was wrongfully accused, to losing your mom, and you know, now you're in a different time where you're, you know, getting closer to freedom, and you was able to, you know, get some lessons on business and stocks and stuff like that. However, I would like for you to share with us about you having a baby while you was in prison.
That's great, cause that is kind of crazy. But it takes me back to when my mom was going through her situation, and there was a person that worked there at the prison, and they was all checking me out, and they was feeling like that. So I ended up arguing with her, telling her to stay away and all that. And then eventually they kept checking on me, and it came to a point where it just for us to got too closer to each other. And once it got too close, it really got real intimate. And from there, and I believe that it's all about God that create that situation, because even with her, she didn't believe it would happen. And by she getting pregnant and around the time my mom was dying, what kind of gave me a little balance for me, kind of like thinking that I didn't want to do nothing to myself, because now I'm in a possibility of having a child, and I didn't have a father growing up. So I feel like, I just give her all this stuff, and it was, kind of like into that situation. And I didn't really want her to get in trouble or anything like that. So I got me sent away from that prison. And when I got sent away from that prison, it kind of like, made it where she was safe, but I never was able to be raised to see the baby until after I came home. And still our kind of relationship is very like real up and downish, so yeah. And I don't really want to talk too much about it, because it was kind of like you ain't supposed to have no baby by no inmates in there in that situation. But I still try to be in my daughter's life, because I didn't want her to grow up like I did. And it's just recently she lost her grandmother, so her first time ever experiencing death since she was living. And it's real tough, and just to go back to from my release to being in prison, I used to always take programs. I tell you, I got a box of things that I accomplished, anger management, breaking barriers, custodian maintenance. I worked at, I did carpentry in there. I took every trade that I can take, because I always tell myself I really learned a lot about a little. And that's what kept me busy. And a lot of times it kept me out of the mind of prison, because that's why I was willing to do things. Because if I got to go out to help somebody dig in the ground, or help this person do this and that, I don't got to be in a prison looking at bars or keeping my mind still, just thinking about, what I've been through. So it's kind of crazy that I experienced something in my life to get me to think about what I was thinking about before I came home, because all this stuff was kind of like going through before I came home. The guy who I was paying to teach me his name was Mike, and Michael, I forgot his last name or whatever, but I was paying him to teach me how to do LLCs. And before he used to tell me, you do LLCs, you can open up LLCs, you can get phones, and all this stuff. So he was telling me, and I had got an LLC. That was my homework. He teach me how to do it, and then from the LLC came into the prison. When you get that, you had to go through the watch commander office, because that's legal work. So you can't get that legal work, legal mail, just like regular mail. So when I went through that legal mail, they came, and the guy was like, "Man, you're amazing. Look at this." He was like, "You got a business?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, but you don't got no business. It's not physical, but it's legit." I'm like, "Yeah." So when I'm out there, the guys just, because when you're doing positive things, or somebody doing positive things, it's always going to shoot some negative things about somebody, and when I'm out there, I didn't care about who I be with. I'm not a type of person that, will just turn my back on anybody, I just was basically talking to anybody, I get, there, just to, help anybody in that situation. So I don't talk to my, like turn my back to there. You had gang members that I used to go in there with the gang members, and I used to tell them, yo, calm down, man. Don't be fighting each other, man. Y'all locked up in here. Y'all need to be fighting each other. We got to go against them, and keep them calm. Or I see some of the, Hispanics and talk to them and make sure they good. So I was always, talking to everybody. So this particular time, the guys came to me like, man, don't fuck with Mike, man. He no good, man. He doing all this stuff, man. He taking, he's scamming people, man. He taking your money. He ain't teaching you shit. And this was before I got my LLC. It was just in the mail, supposed to be coming, but I didn't know because I sent it off. So I go to him the next day, and I'm looking at him, and I said, man, you want to take a fucking advantage of me? He looked at me like, I said, man, he's like, what? I said, man, I want my motherfucking money back. All the money I gave you for the commissary, I want that back. And he was looking at me, and he was like, man, he said, man, what? I said, man, you trying to scam me, man? He said, I'm not trying to. He said, man, I'm not scamming. You say, we around here, you think if I'm scamming them, we said we just teaching and stuff. I said, man, I want my motherfucking money back. So I'm thinking that I'm so more in tune with what people told me. So, I'm like, I want my motherfucking money back. So from there, he was like, hey, man, I said, no. We started walking down, the yard. And while we walking down the yard, he said this to me. He said, hey, let me tell you something. I said, what? He said, I'm going to give you your money back, man, but it's going to be a couple weeks, at a time, because I can't give it all to you because you've been paying me for a few months. But, let me get my family, send me some money, and I'm going to do it, or I can send the money to you if you. And I'm like, I said, man, I need my. And then he was like, man, what makes you said this? I said, man, because these people over here telling me you scamming shit, you taking people's stuff. And he was like, man, all right, man, I don't want no problems, man. I said, nah. He said, listen, I know. He said, but where we at? I said, we in fucking prison, because I didn't know where he was leading it to. And he said, yeah. He said, we in here with 99% negativity in this prison. He said, now, it's like 1% of the people that's probably positive mindset is probably these COs or these people or some people like me over here, and some of these other brothers that's over here, they might be 100% positive. He said, so, you might be getting all your stuff from the negativity people. So I started thinking for a minute, and I'm like, damn. I analyzed, I said, yeah, the two people was talking to me, they're always talking bullshit about people. So while we walking, and I'm getting ready to go to his, walking to his door, and he's about to go in, I said, man, don't worry about it. He said, no, I don't want no problems, man. I'm going to give you your money back. I said, no, don't worry about it. He said, what? I said, listen, you're right. They did come for some negativity people. I don't want to give you, keep doing it. I'm going to keep paying you till I go home to teach me how to do LLCs, how to do all this stuff and that. And he was like, you sure? I said, yeah. So the next day, they called me to watch officer. They were my LLC. And I was just like, wow, and then I kept going through that, There was me and Mr. Curry, we was talking because I got tattoos. I haven't no tattoos since I don't have my tattoos since I've been locked up. And I use my body as like a diary to just go through what I've been through, and everything that I go through, I've been, in there. And I use my body just like, to remind me of what I've been through in the situation. So I used to go in the office of Mr. Curry, and he used to be like, I guess he see my tattoos, like, man, it's gonna be hard for you. I'm like, I used to just like, oh yeah, you ain't listening. And I used to go, I know it's gonna be hard, man, and come to find out, he had people in there that used to have their shirts all get up, like, dressed up. But these people that used to have that little state stuff up there, they was like the people that they used to say, always be in church or whatever, but in the streets, they might be criminals. So he come to find out, he was like, man, when I came home, he's like, man, I couldn't read you made it. He's like, the slogan, don't judge a book by its cover. He said, I didn't really understand till I knew you. And since I've been home, it was hard, you know. Like I said, you know, I know y'all wanted to know this story about this, and there's more to it. Like even when I came home, you know, I've been, you know, going through some hardship. You know, one time I had an accident when I came home, and I was in my house for 4 months with no lights. You know, it was real difficult, real challenging. But since I've been home, I had my rights restored. You know, real estate agent. You know, mortgage lender. Working on completing my bachelor's and getting my credit compared, consulting, everything. All I do is just learn, you know, and I always check up on some friends. You know, I'm still always checking on friends. Recently, last year, I called a friend out of Carolina, and this was a guy that, you know, we call each other brothers because we was tight in prison. So I called him, and when I used to call him, we used to be like, yo, bro, what's up? And it'd be like that. So, you know, hey, man, what's up? What's up? You know, we kick it. But one particular time I called him, this time, and he said to me, man, what the F you calling, man? So I'm thinking this is a joke. He's like, what? I said, man, what the fuck you calling me for, man? Why the fuck you keep calling me? Sound like that. I said, man, what you talking about, man? You drunk? Man, I'm fucking drunk, man. What the fuck you keep calling me, man? You the only person that motherfucker called check up on me, man. My family don't even fucking call check up on me. And I'm like, man, calm down. Man, get the fuck off the phone. So I was like, he in Carolina, I'm in Florida. I said, man, I'm gonna come over there right now and see what you talking about. He said, man, so from there he just started sounding like a crying. He was crying. He was like, you know, from there he was like, man, what the fuck, man? Get the fuck off the phone, man, please, man. I said, man, what's up, man? What the fuck is going on? He's like, man, I'm about to fucking kill myself. Like, man, stop joking. Man, I am gonna fucking kill myself. He's like, man, you call me, fuck you. What's wrong with you, man? How the fuck are you? As soon as I pull the fucking gun to my head about to kill myself, you gonna call. And he got sons. I'm like, man, where your son at? Man, in the fucking house. I'm in the garage, man. But I said, no, man, don't fucking do it. Nah, get the fuck. So he kept doing it till I stayed on the phone with him 2 hours straight, convincing him not to kill himself. For 2 hours straight, I called him and I stayed on the phone with him till he started laughing. And he started saying, man, you know what? You saved me, man. I said, what, man? You saved me, man. I'm telling you. I said, man, stop playing, man. Because, you know, he was crying and he was going through so much. And he was like, you saved me, man. And I said, calm down, man. I don't want to hang up. He's like, no, man. I done put the gun up. I could hear the more cheer in his voice. He said, man, I'm about to go in here and take a shower and take my kids out, man. He said, man, you saved me, man. And as soon as I hung up the phone with him, I was so exhausted, I just went to sleep.
Wow, you have overcame so much hardship from your age of 16 all the way up to the time that you was released from prison, and you also accomplished some great things while in prison. You accomplished some great things, you know, in today's time. You mentioned your real estate agent. You mentioned you're a mortgage loan officer. You accomplished, you know, some schooling. You know, on your way to completing your bachelor's degree, and that is great things you have done. But I also wanted to ask you to share some words with other people that may be going through this stuff. What are some word of advice that you can say to the younger generation?
Well, yes, and that's one of the reasons that I kind of, you know, use take the pain of what I went through to know that it's just for me to understand something. And what did I do is just basically people who talk to going through that, I just tell them to keep going and don't stop. And, you know, like, don't focus on what you're going through right now. You know, make a plan for the future. And kind of like, you know, put yourself into there where you just know that you don't give up. If you're in prison, start reading books, get away from the TV, start making a plan for when you're coming home. And don't just be worrying about the time or keep reliving how you got in there. Because what I look about prison, by me being locked up, it opened my eyes to become a better person. Sometimes you must need to go through that to becoming a better person. So I would just say to tell people is pick up books, don't watch TV, don't keep reliving what you're going through in your mind, and basically try to focus on your future about what you went through. Take your life and use the pain and just make better things and better decisions in life. And just know that even with young kids, it's like a fork in the road. You can do good or you do bad. They promote so much negativity in us that we think that that's the right way to do. And I just say for that.
Well, just want to say, Travis, thank you for sharing your story. Definitely will look forward to hearing more from you, and also want to learn more about your accomplishments. And I think that's it for now.
I appreciate it. And I'll just, keep moving. And it's the first time that I've been talking about it because I relived it. And I'm just looking forward to telling my story to help people overcome their challenge and maybe save people's life. And I also have a nonprofit called Touch the City, Touch the World. The mission is to make the world better by bringing the good out of people. So I'm working on helping young individuals who didn't have father figures, who were being misled or anything, to use their decisions and to make better decisions in life. And that's what I see, because it's all about who you be around and your surroundings. It's about who you do. You can have people that's lower than you, you be around them, they're going to pull you down. You're going to have people that's beside you, they're not going to take you anywhere. But you need to be around people that's higher than you, they're going to be able to lift you up. So it's nothing wrong by telling some people to do the right things and trying to help them out, because a best friend is those who try to bring the best out of you. So, I appreciate it. I know it's more to the story. It's more that I had to give, because raised in prison is so much stuff that I can talk about in prison time. And kind of unfortunately, everybody's kind of like what they call the matrix. So I'm glad that and blessed that I wasn't raised out in society, that I was raised in a prison where I had a chance to study what was going on outside and change the things that I did in my life, so I wouldn't be a statistic of going through, repeating the same thing. So I appreciate, and, you're welcome for me sharing my story. I know this was very difficult for me to say, and a lot of people wanted me to do it, but I do it. And one thing I share with is I don't deal with family as much. Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm usually spent alone. I usually spent Christmas feeding all the homeless people, just so I can see smiles to better this thing. Now, I believe family is real strong and it need to be strong, but unfortunately, I don't have nothing against my family. It's just that I feel like they wasn't there for me when I was going through there, but that's another story or another topic that I could speak to later. So, I appreciate it, and y'all have a good night, and thank you.
Very interesting story, yes. Like, wow, I didn't know he went through that difficult time. I know, it was very chilling to me to see someone at 16 years old going through that very difficult time and turn out to be very professional. Yeah, I see. This gentleman maybe can help my kids get on the right track and learn from him how he turned his life around. I know. I just think he is amazing. I'm looking to hear more from his stories. Maybe he can help me out. I'm looking to get more out of him too. So let's continue giving him interviews. Okay.